The WNBA media just did it again. Caitlin Clark, the biggest name in women's basketball right now, was overlooked as Time magazine named A'ja Wilson one of its Women of the Year. It must be weird to win an award like Time magazine's Woman of the Year. I guess there's multiple Women of the Year, but to win one of these awards like this and immediately feel like you are a victim. I'm confused. But was this about honoring A'ja's achievements, or was it yet another attempt to downplay Caitlin's impact on the game? The debate is heating up, and fans are calling out the double standards. Is this a case of rightful recognition, or is the media deliberately trying to shift the spotlight? Today we're breaking it all down. What happened, why it matters, and what this means for women's basketball. Caitlin Clark has been the face of women's basketball since she stepped onto the court at Iowa. From record-breaking college performances to becoming the most talked-about rookie in WNBA history, her rise has been undeniable. So when Time magazine named A'ja Wilson one of its Women of the Year while seemingly ignoring Clark's impact, it sparked outrage among fans. It wasn't just about the award, it was about the pattern, the ongoing effort by WNBA media to diminish Clark's role in growing the league. The question that many people are asking is simple. Why is Caitlin Clark constantly left out of the conversation when she's done more for women's basketball in the past year than most players have in their entire careers? The controversy surrounding this isn't about whether A'ja Wilson deserves recognition. She's an incredible player, a two-time WNBA champion, and a three-time MVP. But why is it that when an honor like this comes up, the media is quick to celebrate Wilson while Clark's contributions go unmentioned? Look at how the WNBA media treated Clark's Time Magazine Athlete of the Year award compared to how they reacted to Wilson's Woman of the Year feature. When Clark was honored, there was pushback, criticism, and a call for more players to be recognized instead of just her. Some even argued that she didn't deserve it because she hadn't played in the WNBA long enough. Yet when Wilson was named Woman of the Year, the same critics were silent. There were no demands for multiple players to share the spotlight. There was no outrage over who got left out. It's a blatant double standard. The WNBA media wants to celebrate who they choose, not necessarily who is making the biggest impact. Clark has been a game changer. She's brought new eyes, new money, and a new level of interest to women's basketball. And instead of embracing that, the league's media figures have spent more time trying to downplay her influence than actually supporting the growth of the sport. We've seen it time and time again. Clark's college career shattered records, brought in unprecedented viewership numbers, and made women's college basketball a mainstream product. Her games were pulling in more viewers than NBA playoff games. She was breaking records that had stood for decades, and when she entered the WNBA, she immediately became the biggest draw in the league's history. Despite all of that, the WNBA media has treated her like an outsider, as if she hasn't earned her place among the greats, and that brings us to A'ja Wilson's comments in Time magazine. Wilson spoke about how black women in the WNBA have to work 10 times harder to be seen. She implied that players like herself don't get the same level of attention or recognition despite being dominant in the league. That's where things get complicated. No one is denying that black athletes have historically faced challenges when it comes to recognition and opportunities. But in this specific case, A'ja Wilson is not being ignored. She is one of the most celebrated athletes in the league. She has won multiple MVPs. She has been on the cover of NBA 2K. She has a Nike signature shoe, and she just won Time Woman of the Year. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark has been constantly criticized for simply existing. Every accomplishment she achieves is picked apart and downplayed. When she was drafted into the WNBA, there were players already making it clear that they didn't like her presence in the league. When she won Time Athlete of the Year, people demanded that other players should have shared the honor with her. When she gets fouled on the court, fans celebrate it instead of condemning the dirty plays. So how does that fit into the narrative that Wilson and others are pushing? Because if you look at the reality of the situation, it's actually Caitlin Clark who has had to deal with an unprecedented level of resistance. She has become a target, not just for opposing teams on the court, but for the WNBA media, who seem determined to make sure that she doesn't get too much recognition. That's why this latest move by Time magazine feels intentional to a lot of people. It's not about saying A'ja Wilson doesn't deserve recognition. It's about why Caitlin Clark is constantly being left out of these conversations. And if you look at the comments section of the Time magazine post about Wilson's award, you'll see exactly what the problem is. There are people celebrating the decision, of course, but there's also a huge racial divide in the responses. Some comments directly mention Clark, mocking her fans and making it about race rather than about basketball. Some are celebrating Wilson not just because she won, but because Clark didn't. That's what's toxic about this entire situation. Instead of celebrating all the incredible women who are elevating the game, the conversation is constantly being turned into divisive narratives that pit players against each other. The WNBA should be thriving right now. Caitlin Clark's presence in the league should be something that all players and media members celebrate. She's bringing in more money, more sponsorships, and more attention than ever before, and everyone benefits from that. But instead, there's been an effort to undermine her impact, to diminish what she's doing, and to make sure that she doesn't get more credit than the league's established stars. That's not how you grow a sport, and it's not just the fans who see the problem. Even some sports analysts have pointed it out. They've noted how Clark has been singled out in a way that no other player has been. They've questioned why she's held to a different standard. Because let's be honest, if Caitlin Clark had given the same interview that A'ja Wilson just did, people would have lost their minds. Imagine if Clark had talked about how she felt overlooked and underappreciated despite her success. Imagine if she had said she felt like she had to work 10 times harder to get recognized. She would have been absolutely destroyed by the media. But when Wilson says it, silence. That's the double standard that people are calling out. That's why this situation has become so controversial, and the WNBA media isn't doing themselves any favors by continuing to push this narrative. They are turning what should be an incredible moment for women's basketball into yet another exhausting debate about favoritism and exclusion. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about who is the better player. It's about who the media chooses to celebrate. And right now, it's clear that they want to push Caitlin Clark out of the spotlight, even when she's done more to grow the game than anyone else. So what happens next? Does the WNBA finally start embracing Caitlin Clark instead of treating her like an outsider? Or does this divide continue, with certain players being protected and elevated while others, like Clark, are left to fight for their place in the league? Because if the WNBA isn't careful, they might end up alienating the very fans who are tuning in because of Caitlin Clark. And that would be the biggest mistake they could make. The biggest issue facing the WNBA right now isn't just about A'ja Wilson being named Time Magazine's Woman of the Year over Caitlin Clark. It's about the ongoing narrative that keeps dividing the league, its players, and its fans. The WNBA has long struggled for mainstream attention, and now that it finally has it, instead of uniting to push the sport forward, the league seems to be tearing itself apart from within. The divide between veteran players and Caitlin Clark has been building for months. It's no secret that Clark has been treated differently from the moment she stepped onto a WNBA court. The way she has been targeted, dismissed, and even attacked by certain players and media figures is unlike anything we've seen in professional sports. And the Time magazine situation is just another example of the ongoing effort to limit her success rather than celebrate it. When the WNBA got its hands on Caitlin Clark, they were given a golden opportunity. Her presence alone has shifted the landscape of women's basketball in ways that no other player ever has. From ticket sales to sponsorships, media coverage to TV ratings, she has done more for this league in one season than some players have done in their entire careers. But instead of embracing her impact, the league's media has done everything possible to downplay her role in the WNBA's rise. If we look at how other leagues handle breakout stars, the contrast is staggering. When LeBron James entered the NBA, the league welcomed him with open arms. When Patrick Mahomes took over the NFL, he became the face of the sport overnight. Serena Williams dominated tennis and was embraced globally. But Caitlin Clark, she's been met with hostility, jealousy, and constant scrutiny. And now, with A'ja Wilson getting Time Magazine's Woman of the Year recognition, it feels like yet another slap in the face to Clark's contributions. It's not that Wilson isn't deserving. She's an elite player, a champion, and a leader. But the fact that every time Clark achieves something, the conversation is immediately shifted to why someone else deserves the spotlight more is telling. The WNBA media has tried to create the narrative that Clark's success is a problem, that it somehow takes away from other players. But that logic makes no sense. In reality, Clark's presence benefits every single player in the league, including Wilson. The increased attention means bigger paychecks, more sponsorship opportunities, and a higher profile for all WNBA players. And yet, some people within the league seem more focused on keeping her from becoming the face of the WNBA than actually supporting its growth. It's frustrating for fans, too. People want to see great basketball, and they want to support the players who are pushing the game forward. But when they see constant negativity surrounding Clark, it turns them off from the league entirely. Fans don't want to feel like they're being forced to pick sides. They want to enjoy the game and celebrate all of the players making an impact. But when the media and certain players keep fueling division instead of unity, it only hurts the sport in the long run. The WNBA is at a crossroads. They have two choices: either embrace the momentum Caitlin Clark has brought or continue to push back against it and risk losing everything they've gained. Because here's the harsh truth. Clark's presence is what's keeping the WNBA relevant right now. If she were to leave the league tomorrow, it would be a financial disaster. Ticket sales would drop, viewership would decline, and the sudden influx of mainstream attention would fade. That's not an exaggeration. It's the reality of how sports work. The NBA has been around for decades and can afford to lose a superstar. The NFL is the biggest sports league in the world and can handle player turnover without missing a beat. But the WNBA, it doesn't have that kind of stability yet. It needs players who can draw new fans and bring in the money to keep the league running. And right now, no one does that better than Caitlin Clark. The treatment of Clark also raises another important issue. Why does the media allow other WNBA players to take shots at her without consequence? We've seen multiple players mock her, trash her on social media, and even celebrate when she gets fouled hard during games. That kind of behavior would never be tolerated in the NBA or NFL. Imagine if a group of NBA players publicly mocked a young star like Victor Wembanyama or openly celebrated when he got injured. It would be a huge scandal. But when it happens to Clark, the media either ignores it or justifies it. This toxic environment isn't good for anyone. Not for Clark, not for Wilson, and certainly not for the league itself. If the WNBA wants to be taken seriously, it needs to start acting like a professional league. That means supporting all of its players, embracing its biggest stars, and putting an end to the negativity that is driving fans away. Some people argue that Clark gets too much attention, that she hasn't earned her place in the league yet. But that argument falls apart when you look at the facts. She was named Time Magazine's Athlete of the Year because her impact on sports is undeniable. She's not just a good player, she's a cultural phenomenon, and that's something that should be celebrated, not resented. The WNBA needs to realize that gatekeeping success is not how you grow a league. If you want to build a sustainable and profitable sports organization, you embrace the players who bring in the most attention. You don't tear them down, and you certainly don't let others try to push them out. Look at how the NBA handled the rise of Michael Jordan. The league didn't try to limit his success because other players had been there longer. They recognized that he was bringing something special to the sport, and they leaned into it. They built the NBA around him, and the results speak for themselves. Basketball exploded in popularity, and today the league is a global powerhouse. The WNBA is now at a similar moment. They can either embrace Clark as the player who is elevating the league to new heights, or they can continue to let this division fester and risk losing the momentum they've worked so hard to build. Fans want to see great basketball. They want to support all of the league stars, not just one or two. But when the media makes it clear that they're going to favor certain players over others and push narratives that create division, it leaves fans frustrated, and when fans feel disconnected from a sport, they stop watching. That's the real danger here. The WNBA can't afford to drive away the new fans that Clark has brought in. If they do, they might not get another opportunity like this again. Caitlin Clark has already done more for the WNBA than most players ever will, and whether the league likes it or not, she's going to be the face of women's basketball for years to come. The question is, will the WNBA support that and grow the sport? Or will they let jealousy and division hold them back? Right now, it seems like they're choosing the second option, and that's a mistake they can't afford to make. The Time magazine controversy is just the latest example of how the WNBA is mishandling one of its greatest opportunities. If they don't change course soon, they might look back at this moment and realize that they threw away the chance to take women's basketball to the next level. Caitlin Clark isn't going anywhere. The WNBA needs to figure out whether they want to build their future with her or against her, because if they keep fighting this battle, they might end up losing everything they've worked so hard to achieve. So what do you think? Did Caitlin Clark get snubbed, or was this just a case of A'ja Wilson getting the recognition she deserves? Let us know in the comments.